Welcome. This lesson is for BSc 3rd year 5th semester students. The lesson is from Physiology and Biochemistry paper. The topic is respiration. From this lesson, the learners will be able to know and understand about meaning and definition of respiration, respiratory pigments, human respiratory system, mechanism of breathing, exchange of respiratory gases, and transport of oxygen. Respiration is an important physiological activity. Animals' life is dependent upon its ability to utilize oxygen and eliminate carbon dioxide. The meaning of the term respiration in Latin is to breathe, that is, inhale air and exhale it. So the respiratory gas which enters into the body is transported through blood to different cells of the body. Within the cells, the digested food is oxidized and energy is released. That energy is trapped in the form of ATP. This ATP is utilized in various metabolic activities. The carbon dioxide produced during these activities is removed from the body through the respiratory organs. The organisms, unicellular organisms like protozoans, they take oxygen from their surroundings and release the CO2 into the surroundings. But in higher organisms, various respiratory organs have been developed like skin, trachea, then gills and lungs. So these animals take oxygen with the help of these respiratory organs and eliminate the carbon dioxide into the surroundings. So oxygen respiration can be studied as oxygen reaches the cells and carbon dioxide is given out through a complicated physiological process called respiration. So respiration is a chemical activity taking place in protoplasm of the cell and results in the liberation of energy. And the other form of definition is the process of obtaining energy by oxidation of food molecules is called respiration. So the overall reaction of respiration can be studied here. C6H12O6, that is glucose, in the presence of oxygen 6O2 gives 6CO2 plus H2O, water, and energy is liberated. There are two types of respiration: aerobic respiration and anaerobic respiration. Aerobic respiration occurs in the presence of oxygen. In this process, the food is completely oxidized and a high amount of energy is liberated. All the animals, they perform aerobic respiration. Anaerobic respiration occurs in the absence of oxygen. Here the food is incompletely oxidized and less amount of energy is liberated. Respiration can also be, it can be distinguished into three types. One is external respiration, internal respiration, and cellular respiration. External respiration is the exchange of gases occur between the alveoli of lung and the blood circulating around the alveoli. So this is called external respiration. In internal respiration, the exchange of gases, that is oxygen and carbon dioxide, occurs at the tissue level, at the tissues between the blood and cells. And cellular respiration includes the oxidation of food molecules to liberate energy. So here a series of enzymatic reactions takes place through glycolysis, Krebs cycle and electron transport system, and energy is produced in the form of ATP. Now let us study about respiratory pigments. Respiratory pigment is a molecule that increases the oxygen carrying capacity of blood. There are 4 common respiratory pigments which are found in different animals. Among them, hemoglobin is the most common respiratory pigment. Hemoglobin is an iron-containing metalloprotein. Hemoglobin is found in red blood corpuscles of vertebrates. Hemoglobin carries oxygen from the respiratory organs like gills and lungs to the tissues. It supplies oxygen to the cells so that they can perform their oxidation of food materials, that is the digested food materials present in the cells, and energy is liberated for various metabolic activities. So out of the total RBC weight, this hemoglobin constitutes about 35%. So hemoglobin, it can bind with 4 oxygen molecules. It has oxygen binding capacity of 1.34 ml oxygen per gram. It is highly efficient respiratory. It is a highly efficient respiratory pigment. The second respiratory pigment is hemocyanin. Hemocyanin is second to the hemoglobin in its occurrence or in its efficiency. Hemocyanin is a copper-containing metalloprotein. Unlike hemoglobin, hemocyanin is found suspended in the hemolymph. It is found in the arthropods and molluscans. Hemocyanin has 2 copper atoms which bind reversibly to 1 oxygen molecule. Hemocyanin is colorless in deoxygenated form and it is bright blue in oxygenated state. Hemocyanin is less efficient than hemoglobin, roughly about 1/4. The third pigment is hemerythrin. Hemerythrin is found in the red blood corpuscles of some marine invertebrates like sipenculids, priapulids, brachiopods, and a single annelid genus, namely Magellona. So this is a oligomeric protein, hemerythrin, and a monomeric protein called myohemerythrin is also present. It is found in the muscles of some marine invertebrates. So both this hemerythrin and myohemerythrin, they are colorless in deoxygenated form and they appear violet pink in oxygenated state. So they are less efficient than hemoglobin, roughly 1/4 as efficient as hemoglobin. And the fourth respiratory pigment is chlorocruorin. This chlorocruorin is present in some polychaete families, namely Sabellidae and Serpulidae. It is seen in the plasma of their blood. Chlorocruorin, it is a dichromatic compound. It appears green in deoxygenated state. The blood appears green in deoxygenated state due to the presence of chlorocruorin, and Also in the oxygenated state, it appears green. The affinity for oxygen is very low. It is less efficient than hemoglobin. So apart from these four respiratory pigments, there are also some of the respiratory pigments which occur very rarely. Among them is one is spinoglobin, and this spinoglobin consists of manganese. It is brown colored pigment. It is present in the plasma of lamellibranch and pinna. And the next respiratory pigment is vanadium, and this is green in color. It is seen in the vanadocytes of some sea squirts. Sea squirts, or they belong to Urocardate subphylum Hesidians. And another pigment is called as echinochrome. Echinochrome is seen in sea urchins belonging to the phylum Echinodermata. And molbdin is another respiratory pigment. It is seen in echinoderms, but in holothurians in the genus called Molbdia. So this is about the respiratory pigments. Now let us discuss about mammalian respiratory system. In mammals, the respiration takes place through a pair of lungs. Human is a highly evolved mammal. So here I am going to discuss about the respiratory system of human. Human respiratory system consists of various parts like external nostrils, nasopharynx, epiglottis, trachea, bronchus, bronchioles, alveolar sac and alveoli. So this is the respiratory system of human. In the respiratory system of human, external nostrils are present over the upper lips. They lead into the nasal cavities, also called as nasal passages, and these nasal passages open into nasopharynx region, and this nasopharynx opens into the thorax, a wide tube called thorax, and this thorax, it crosses the neck region and enters the thoracic cavity, in the mid-thoracic cavity. So upon this trachea at the anterior end, there is a broad structure called larynx. This larynx is a sound producing organ. It is also called as sound box. So trachea is also called as windpipe, and this windpipe is divided into two branches in the thoracic cavity. So these branches are called as bronchi. Singular is bronchus. So the right bronchus, it enters into the right lung, and the left bronchus enters into the left lung, and these bronchi, they divide further in their respective lungs, and they give rise to secondary bronchi, tertiary bronchi, and later on they form the bronchioles. Tertiary bronchi further divide and form bronchioles. So at each terminal bronchiole consists of a sac-like structure called alveolar sac, and within that alveolar sac we can see a small tiny chambers called as alveoli. So this looks like a cluster of grapes. All this with the bronchi, bronchioles, and these alveolar sacs, they look like alveoli. All together they look like a cluster of grapes. So in mammals, in human, the lungs, they are surrounded by a double layered wall. That double layered wall is called as pleura, This is the pleura, and between these two layers there is some cavity called pleural cavity, and pleural cavity is filled with pleural fluid. So this fluid helps the lungs from the shocks and reduces the friction. So this is the interior and exterior view of lungs. Here we can see the trachea. These are the bronchi. This is the exterior view. So the right lung, it is divided into three lobes: upper lobe, lower lobe and middle lobe. And left lung is divided into two lobes, upper lobe and lower lobe. So here we can see the inner view, bronchi dividing into secondary bronchi, tertiary bronchi, and leading into bronchioles, and these bronchioles leading into alveolar sacs, and these alveolar sacs have alveoli. And this is the diaphragm. Diaphragm is a structure which divides the body cavity of the mammal into two: upper thoracic cavity, and this is the abdominal cavity. So functionally, respiratory system is divided into two parts. It can be divisible into two parts. One is the conducting part, and this conducting part it starts from the external nostrils to bronchioles, and the second is the exchange part. This exchange part includes alveolar sacs, alveoli and their ducts. The conducting part helps in transport of atmospheric air to the lungs. It also helps in removing the dust particles. It moistens the air, and it also warms up the air to the body temperature before the air is delivered to the lungs. And the exchange part, in the exchange part, the diffusion and exchange of gases takes place. So the exchange part is the actual respiratory surface. So this image shows the entry of the blood into the lungs. So here we can see these are the bronchioles. And here this is a pulmonary artery. Pulmonary artery, it breaks up into several branches, and it surrounds the alveolus, alveolar sac. So this is the alveolar sac, and this is a capillary network which is formed by the branching of the pulmonary artery. Artery breaks into arterioles, and arterioles break into several capillaries which form a network on the surface of the alveolus. And later on, these capillaries again reunite to form the pulmonary vein which moves out of the alveolar sac, Now let us study about the structure of alveolus. Alveolus is the actual site where the exchange of gases occur. Alveolus is a structural and functional unit of respiration. In human lung, there are about 700 million alveoli are present. So these alveoli, the surface of the alveoli together is about 70 to 90 square meters, that is the length of the tennis court. Each alveolus, it is surrounded by a membrane called epithelium, squamous epithelium, and that epithelium is about 0.1 millimicrons in thickness. And this alveoli has a rich supply of capillary network around it. We have just studied the previous slide. And this alveolus, it also consists of elastic and collagen layer. So this elastic and collagen layer, it helps in expansion and recoiling of the alveolus during breathing movements. And there is a layer called, there is a substance called, a detergent like substance called surfactant is produced by special cells, is present in the alveolus, and this helps in, it plays a key role in respiration. It allows easy exchange of gases in the alveoli, and it kills the bacteria that are present in the air that has come inside from the surroundings. And this surfactant, it also reduces the surface tension in the membrane, in the moist membrane lying inside of the alveolus. And it also helps in reducing the effort that is needed for the lung inflation during breathing movements. Respiration occurs in 5 stages. That is, they are pulmonary ventilation, external respiration, transport of gases, internal respiration, and cellular respiration. During pulmonary ventilation, it is also called breathing. The outside air from the atmospheric air enters into the lungs. The oxygen is carried to the alveoli of lungs, and the carbon dioxide present in the alveoli is eliminated to outside. So this is the first exchange of gases, respiratory gases. And this is the second is the external respiration. During external respiration, from the alveoli, oxygen enters into the blood capillaries which are surrounded around the alveoli, and the carbon dioxide present in the blood capillaries, it enters into alveoli. Carbon dioxide present in the blood capillaries surrounding the alveoli enters into the cavity of the alveoli. And here in this external respiration, second exchange of gases takes place. And the third is transport of gases. In the transport of gases, from the blood, the oxygen is transported to cells, and from the cells, the carbon dioxide is transported to lungs through blood in the form of bicarbonate ions. So next is internal respiration. In internal respiration, oxygen is delivered into the cells, and the carbon dioxide, it is carried into the blood. So this is called as internal respiration. So this is the third exchange. And fifth is cellular respiration. In cellular respiration, the oxygen delivered to the cells is used for oxidation of the digested food materials. Now let us see about the first stage in respiration, that is breathing or pulmonary ventilation. So this breathing is done with the help of muscles. The muscles which are present in the diaphragm region, and external intercostal muscles as well as internal intercostal muscles which are present in between the ribs. They help in breathing movements. So during this process, the external air is inhaled into the lungs. This process occurs two stages. One is the inhalation and second is the exhalation. During inhalation, air is inhaled into the lungs, and during exhalation, air is exhaled, that is CO2 is eliminated. So during inhalation, air enters into the lungs. So during this process, this inhalation process is initiated by the contraction of the diaphragm. So the diaphragm contracts, at the same time external intercostal muscles also contract, so that the thoracic cavity enlarges in size, it expands. With this, the outer air comes into the thoracic region and the air is filled in the lungs. This process is called inhalation. And during exhalation, the diaphragm muscles relax. At the same time, the intercostal muscles also relax, so that the thoracic cage comes to its original position. Thereby, the space in the lungs becomes reduced and a pressure develops. So due to this intrapulmonary pressure, the air which is present in the lungs is expelled out. So this process is called exhalation. During inhalation, due to the contraction of the diaphragm and external intercostal muscles, thoracic cavity increases, the lung space increases. With this, the intrapulmonary pressure is low during this process, so the outside air rushes inside. Later on, the diaphragm muscles in the diaphragm and the intercostal muscles relax. With this, the thoracic cavity decreases, the space in lungs reduces, so that the intrapulmonary pressure increases. That high pressure will be there. With the help of that pressure, the air which is present in the lungs is expelled out. So this is the breathing or pulmonary ventilation. Now let us see about the gaseous exchange. Gaseous exchange, the meaning of this is taking in of oxygen and giving out the carbon dioxide. So as already we have studied earlier, this occurs in three locations. First is between the atmospheric air and the alveolar air. And second is alveolar air and blood capillaries which are present in lungs. And third is blood and tissues. So this gaseous exchange is mainly based on diffusion. The rate of diffusion between two regions is governed by a relationship called Fick's law of diffusion. So here the equation is R is equal to D into A delta P by D. So R is the rate of diffusion, D is the diffusion constant. Diffusion constant is the solubility of gas or molecular weight of the gas. Area A is equal to area over which the diffusion occurs, and delta P is equal to the difference in the partial pressures of oxygen and carbon dioxide between the venous blood of lung capillaries and the air in the alveoli, or between arterial blood and tissues. And D is the thickness of the membrane involved in diffusion. So the difference in partial pressure plays an important role in the exchange of gas. So what is partial pressure? Partial pressure of a gas is the pressure contributed by a gas in a mixture of gases. So atmospheric air consists of many gases like nitrogen, oxygen, carbon dioxide and some inert gases. So the fraction of, they are present in different fractions, and the pressure contributed by each gas together forms the atmospheric pressure. So here we can see the partial pressures of some of the gases. Nitrogen partial pressure can be obtained by multiplying the atmospheric pressure into its composition in the atmosphere. So this is 760 into 79% of nitrogen, that gives the 600 mmHg. So this is the partial pressure of nitrogen. In the same manner, oxygen 21%. This is 160 mmHg, and carbon dioxide 0.04%, this gives us 0.3 mmHg. So the difference in the values of these partial pressures of gases establish a concentration gradient at the site of exchange. So this concentration gradient, it facilitates the movement of gases from a place of higher concentration to a place of lower concentration. So in this image we can see, this image shows the partial pressure of respiratory gases, that is oxygen and carbon dioxide, at different sites of gaseous exchange and the directions of diffusion. So this is the exchange site 1, where this is atmosphere and lungs. Between the lungs exchange occurs. Oxygen has 160 mm of Hg in the atmosphere. So the pressure is high. So it flows towards the lungs. And here CO2 pressure is 0.3, but in lungs it is 46. So from the lungs it reaches the atmosphere. And this is the exchange site 2, between alveoli and lung capillaries. In the alveoli, oxygen partial pressure is 104, and in the lung capillaries it is 40. So from the alveoli, oxygen enters lung capillaries, and CO2 pressure is 40 in alveoli and lung capillaries 46. Hence from lung capillaries CO2 enters the alveoli. And this is exchange site 3 between systemic blood and tissues. So oxygen partial pressure is 95 mmHg in systemic blood and in tissues 40. So from the blood oxygen enters the tissues. While the carbon dioxide partial pressure in tissues is 46 mmHg, and from here CO2 enters into the systemic blood. So this image shows the diffusion of respiratory gases at different sites and partial pressure of oxygen and carbon dioxide levels. So here we can see in the atmospheric air the partial pressure of oxygen is 160 and carbon dioxide is 0.2. So during inspiration from the atmosphere, oxygen enters into the lungs, and from the lungs it is circulated through pulmonary circulation and systemic circulation, and later on the oxygen enters the tissues and finally the cells. And from the cells, here the partial pressure of carbon dioxide is 46. From here it enters into the blood flow through circulation, arteries and veins, and it enters to the lungs, and from the lungs when it reaches about here it is about 40, and through expiration, as there is low pressure outside, from here it is expirated out. The CO2 is expelled out during respiration. So these are the gradients across the pulmonary capillaries. We can see here. We have just what we have seen the previous slide. Systemic capillaries, and here this thing shows the net diffusion gradients for oxygen and carbon dioxide between the lungs and tissues. So the partial pressure of oxygen is high, and from high the oxygen enters towards a lower partial pressure, and then CO2 from high with high partial pressure in the body, it enters outside where the partial pressure is low. So the diffusion of gases, the exchange of gases, it also depends not only on the partial pressure but also the solubility of the gas. So the solubility of the gas, when we consider this, carbon dioxide is more soluble 20 to 25 times than oxygen. So the diffusion of the CO2 is rapid than oxygen. And the third factor which shows the third factor which shows effect on the gaseous exchange is the respiratory membrane, that is the diffusion membrane. So the diffusion membrane is present in near the alveolus. The diffusion membrane consists of three layers, that is the epithelium, the squamous epithelium lining the alveolar cells, and then basement membrane and the endothelial cells of the capillaries. Basement membrane contributed by the capillary as well as alveolar basement membrane, then epithelium of the alveolus, and then endothelium of capillaries. So capillary wall. So the blood, oxygen has to cross these diffusion membrane. So this membrane is about 0.2 to 0.5 millimicrons in thickness. The thinner the membrane, the diffusion is greater. And another factor which affects the gaseous exchange or diffusion is the capillaries are very narrow when compared to the red blood corpuscles. So the red blood corpuscles have to squeeze in the narrow blood capillaries so that their shape will become, it will expand, and it looks like the umbrella. It expands like the umbrella so that the surface area of the red blood corpuscle will increase, and there is a great chance of diffusion of gas. At the same time, it has to travel through the narrow capillary, so the RBC will take much time. So the time also increases, and it helps in receiving a great amount of oxygen. So as soon as they leave the alveolus, then they will have the O2, oxygen and carbon dioxide will have the same concentration of the surroundings. Now let us see about the transport of gases. The respiratory gases, oxygen and carbon dioxide, are transported through blood. So the oxygen that is diffused into the lungs, into the alveolus, it is carried by pulmonary veins into the heart. So from the heart, this blood, that is the oxygenated blood, is supplied to different tissues by systemic arteries. And the blood with carbon dioxide is carried to the heart with the help of systemic veins, and these veins they enter the heart, and from the heart the blood with CO2 reaches the lungs through pulmonary artery. So this how the circulation of the blood occurs, oxygenated and deoxygenated blood, that we have seen in the earlier slide. Now let us see how the transport of oxygen occurs. So the transport of oxygen occurs with the help of the erythrocytes. Erythrocytes contain hemoglobin, and the hemoglobin consists of it is a protein which consists of four polypeptide chains, two alpha chains and two beta chains, and they consist of a heme group and an ion which has the ion. Here the hemoglobin, one molecule of hemoglobin, it binds to four molecules of oxygen and forms the oxyhemoglobin. So we can see in the form of equation here, hemoglobin, it unites with four oxygen molecules and forms the oxyhemoglobin, Hb4O2. So in the form of oxyhemoglobin, the oxygen is transported from the lungs to the tissues. So about 97% of oxygen is transported in the form of oxyhemoglobin to the tissues. And the remaining 3% of oxygen is transported in the dissolved form through the plasma of blood. So several studies have shown that about in 100 ml of blood, 20.2 ml of oxygen is carried. In this, 19.6 ml of blood is carried with the help of RBC, and 0.6 is carried in the form dissolved in plasma. The affinity of oxygen to hemoglobin is explained by oxygen dissociation curve. The oxygen dissociation curve is also called as oxygen equilibrium curve. This oxygen dissociation curve, it describes the relationship between partial pressure of oxygen and percent saturation of hemoglobin. Partial pressure of oxygen is taken on the x-axis and the percent saturation of hemoglobin on the y-axis. So the curve is sigmoid curve, and it is S-shaped, and the shape of the curve results from association or dissociation of oxygen with the hemoglobin. The percent saturation, it depends on the partial pressure of the oxygen. Here in the oxygen dissociation curve, the partial pressure of oxygen is plotted on the x-axis and the percent saturation of hemoglobin on y-axis. So at the capillary and alveolar interface, where the partial pressure is about 104 mmHg, then the 100% saturation of hemoglobin occurs. Oxygen binds with the hemoglobin at 100%. As the blood leaves the alveolus, then the partial pressure reduces a little, that is 100 mmHg, and at this pressure the saturation of hemoglobin with oxygen is about 97% saturation occurs. So as the blood flows through the systemic capillaries, and when it enters into the tissues, then the partial pressure at that region is about 40 mmHg, and here the pressure and here the saturation is only about 75%. So here in the resting cells, the oxygen, only about 22% of oxygen diffuses into the tissues, that is 97 minus 75. That is remains in the blood. So only 1/5 of the oxygen enters into the resting cell, and the remaining will be in the blood as a reserve, and it is it is utilized by during high metabolism like exercise or at rest also even. So this oxygen is about this oxygen when during exercise, when the pressure reduces to 20 mmHg, then the percent saturation is about only 35% saturation occurs. So during this 97 minus 35, that during this condition the oxygen is unloaded about 60 to 62 percentage. So in the oxygen dissociation curve, towards the left side of the curve, oxygen, it shows the oxygen affinity with hemoglobin. Oxygen associates with the hemoglobin. And the right side of the curve shows the dissociation of oxygen from hemoglobin. So this is a sigmoid curve, and in this curve, a steep rise in the curve shows the range at the systemic capillaries, and a small drop in the partial pressure releases high amounts of oxygen. So towards the left side of the curve, oxygen, when the curve moves towards the left side, it shows that oxygen has high affinity with the hemoglobin, and it will not easily release the oxygen to the tissues. And when the curve moves towards the right side, oxygen has low affinity with the hemoglobin, and the oxygen is easily released to the tissues. So here in the metabolically active animals, the curve will be shifted towards the right side, and in sluggish animals, the curve will shift towards the left side. So the oxygen dissociation curve can be easily studied, or the affinity of hemoglobin towards the oxygen can be studied at the partial pressure of oxygen at 50 mm of Hg. When the partial pressure of the oxygen is 50 mm Hg, then 50% saturation of hemoglobin occurs in normal persons. But this will be altered in diseased conditions, in abnormal conditions. So at 100 mm of Hg, only 97% of oxygen is saturated with hemoglobin. Total 100% will not occur at any time, and this is at any time. This slide shows affinity of hemoglobin for oxygen. Hemoglobin is an allosteric protein. It changes its shape on binding with oxygen. Hemoglobin exists in two states: T state, that is called tense state, and relaxed state or state. At low partial pressure of oxygen, it is called as tense state, and it has low affinity for oxygen. At high partial pressure of oxygen, that stage is called as relaxed state, and it has high affinity for oxygen. So this graph shows the affinity of hemoglobin for oxygen. Hemoglobin has 4 polypeptide chains, 2 alpha chains and 2 beta chains. So each chain will combine with a heme group. So at low partial pressure, it is in T state. As the subunits they bind with the oxygen, then they transform into R state. So there will be change in the structure, and they will transform into R stage. So in the R stage, we can see that here they are having 4 oxygen molecules, and here the curve is it has retained in the straight manner. So that is saturation has occurred as the 4 oxygen molecules have been binded to the hemoglobin. So from T state, tense state, it has transformed to relaxed state. So this can hemoglobin can bind with oxygen reversibly. So with this property, hemoglobin has become an efficient carrier for oxygen. So at the pressure PO2 or at high PO2, it can at the lungs it will be loading the oxygen, and at the tissues where the PO2 is less, it will be unloading the oxygen. Now let us see about the factors influencing standard oxygen dissociation curve. So the factors include pH, carbon dioxide, carbon monoxide, temperature, 2,3-diphosphoglycerate. So we shall study about the first 2 factors in detail at later. With the help of carbon monoxide. Carbon monoxide, it has high efficiency, about 240 times more than oxygen. So carbon monoxide can react with hemoglobin and forms carboxyhemoglobin. With the union of the carbon monoxide with one of the polypeptide, the other 3 will have the oxygen, and in the presence of carbon monoxide, the other oxygens are retained in the they get high retention, and the oxygen will not be easily released to the tissue. Thus, this results in the hypoxia conditions, and it may be fatal sometimes, and it leads to fatality. So here the carbon monoxide, in the presence of carbon monoxide, the curve is shifted towards the left side. And next is the temperature. So high temperature causes the oxygen dissociation curve towards it shifts towards the right side, and low temperature shifts the curve towards the left side. In high temperature, metabolic reactions increase so that more CO2 is produced, hence oxygen is liberated. And then last is the 2,3-diphosphoglycerate. 2,3-diphosphoglycerate, it is produced during the erythrocytes during the glycolysis reaction. At the high level of 2,3-diphosphoglycerate, it causes rightward shift of the oxygen dissociation curve, and this happens in some lung diseases, hypoxia conditions. Now let us see about the Bohr effect. Bohr effect is the decrease in the oxygen affinity of hemoglobin in response to decreased blood pH, which has resulted from increased carbon dioxide concentration in blood. Carbon dioxide, which is produced by the cells, is released into the blood, and this mixes with the blood, and the erythrocytes present in the blood will take up this carbon dioxide. The water present in the erythrocytes unites with the carbon dioxide and forms the carbonic acid in the presence of carbonic anhydrase enzyme. Soon after the formation of carbonic acid, it spontaneously dissociates to H plus ions and HCO3 ions, that is bicarbonate ions. After the formation of this, the H plus ions, that is the protons, they unite with the oxyhemoglobin and release the oxygen, replacing the oxygen. That is, the protons will bind to the hemoglobin and they release the oxygen. So with this, due to the formation of, when the carbon dioxide concentration in the blood increases, this causes increase in the protons, and due to the increase of protons, then acidification of the fluids occurs, and due to the high carbon dioxide concentration, and thus the pH is lowered due to acidification. Thus what happens, the oxygen dissociation curve will shift towards the right side. That is, in actively working cells, due to increase in carbon dioxide concentration and low pH, the dissociation of oxyhemoglobin occurs and oxygen is liberated. So carbon dioxide, high carbon dioxide concentration and low pH shift the oxygen dissociation curve towards the right side. So this is a graphical representation of effect of pH, CO2, temperature and TPG on % saturation of hemoglobin. So here we can see all this will favor, decrease will favor binding of oxygen to hemoglobin, temperature of carbon dioxide 2,3 dpg, but increase in pH, it favors binding of oxygen to hemoglobin. And here we can see that temperature increase in carbon dioxide, then increase in 2,3 dpg and low pH. This favors releasing of oxygen from hemoglobin.